Welcome to Life Lessons from Dog. I'm Kari Solberg. For over 12 years, I've been immersed in the world of dogs, with 10 of those years being dedicated to professional training. My journey has taken me from fostering rescue dogs to owning and operating a boarding, training, and daycare facility. Along the way, I've discovered something profound. Our dogs are some of the best teachers we'll ever have. Through countless experiences, I've learned life-changing lessons from the dogs I've worked with. Lessons about patience, trust, resilience, and connection. But today, I want to share a story that challenged and transformed the way I navigate energy and anxiety, both in my life and in my work. And like many of the lessons I've shared, it started with one dog and one unforgettable experience. For this life lesson, we're heading back to my time with Buddy at the Training Cesar's Way workshop at the Dog Psychology Center in Santa Clarita, California. I've mentioned before that this workshop was full of challenges for both Buddy and me, and one of the biggest for me was learning to manage my newfound sensitivity to energy. Let me set the stage. A few months before this workshop, I started noticing something strange. I would be enjoying a meal with a friend, completely engaged in the conversation, when suddenly my mood would shift dramatically. At first, I thought it was just a fluke. Maybe I was tired or distracted. But it kept happening, and I started to notice a pattern. My mood would change as soon as someone new entered the space. Concerned for my mental health, I reached out to a therapist, and in just a few sessions, we figured out that I wasn't imagining things. I was highly attuned to the energy around me in a way I had never noticed before. This discovery came with its own set of challenges. While it was validating to know that it wasn't all in my head, I now had to figure out how to manage this sensitivity without it overwhelming me. Thanks to my therapist, I did have some tools in my toolbox by the time Buddy and I arrived at the workshop, but I had no idea how much of a test this trip would be. Before we dive deeper into this story, I want to take a moment to thank you for joining me on this journey. If you're enjoying the podcast so far, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes where I share more life-changing lessons from the canine world. You can also connect with me on Blue Sky and TikTok at Life Lessons from Dog, where I share additional insights, stories, and behind-the-scene moments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to follow along and join in the conversation. Now, let's head back to the Training Cesar's Way workshop and the lessons Buddy and I learned together. Not every attendee at the workshop brought a dog, but those of us who did got an extra layer of work. On the first day, we met in our classroom under a big canvas tent to evaluate each dog's energy one at a time, using Cesar's approach to understanding their state of mind. The staff brought each of us our dogs as we waited to be called up to step onto the platform with Cesar. When Buddy was brought to me, I almost immediately felt a wave of panic in my system. It wasn't about being on stage, and it wasn't about being starstruck by Cesar. This was different. The best way I can describe it is this. It felt like my body was a glass overflowing with carbonation bubbles. I tried to calm myself with the most basic tool I had, breath work. Inhale for 3 counts, exhale for 5. The bubbles would dissipate for a moment, but as soon as I took another breath, they came rushing back. Buddy mirrored my energy. He was hypervigilant, his muscles quivering, but he wasn't defensive. It was as if we were both locked in this state of unrelenting tension. Our turn finally came, and when we stood at the steps to get up on the stage, I went through the practice that Cesar recommends. Head up, shoulders back and down, deep breath in and out, and walk. I made it up one step before I felt the solid boulder that Buddy had become stop me in my tracks. He absolutely was not going to budge. Cesar encouraged me to reset and try again. I nodded, turned around, and repeated, head up, shoulders back and down, deep breath in and out, and walk. 2 steps forward, and again, the boulder that was Buddy was not moving. Frustrated but curious, I stepped aside as Cesar offered to demonstrate. I then watched as Cesar set himself, head up, shoulders back and down, took a deep breath, and walked. and Buddy walked up the stairs without any hesitation. That moment blew my mind. I had seen Cesar do things like this on TV, but witnessing it in person, experiencing it with my own dog, was something else entirely. It wasn't a light switch for me. I didn't walk away from that moment completely healed or transformed, but it did put cracks in my understanding of energy and anxiety. If Buddy could let go of his resistance so quickly with a more stable handler, why couldn't I do the same for myself? Why did I need tools, rituals, and constant effort, while Buddy could make the decision to let go in an instant? What I eventually realized was this. The more I tried to force the energy out, the more it stayed with me. The more I focused on processing it, the less effective my efforts became. That experience was just the beginning of a long journey for me, one that I'm still navigating to this day. It was the spark that ignited a deeper understanding of energy and what it means to live and work with it. Over time, I've come to see that energy management isn't about labeling things like fear or anxiety or excitement. Those labels, while useful for context, often distract us from what really matters, how we respond to the energy itself. With dogs, I see this play out constantly. We often focus so much on diagnosing their behavior, labeling it as fear, aggression, or excitement, that we miss the root cause. The behavior is just a symptom of their state of mind, of the energy that they're carrying in that moment. The real work lies in addressing that state of mind, in guiding the energy to a healthier place. The majority of dogs I work with struggle with what I call energy management issues. It shows up in a variety of ways: leash reactivity, overexcitement, separation anxiety, stranger danger, the list goes on. But the solution isn't about controlling or suppressing that energy. It's about leading through it. And the same is true for us. For some people, managing energy can be as simple as acknowledging the sensations in their body, naming what's happening, and then choosing to let it go. But for others, like me, it takes more. I started to look to dogs for inspiration. Dogs are masters of finding productive outlets for their energy when they're given the chance to. When their movement is restricted by being on a leash, they often turn to other ways of releasing that pent-up energy. Things like a full body shake it off, an intense yawn that seems to come from deep in their belly, or even a long stretch. These seemingly simple gestures are incredibly effective at resetting their state of mind and releasing tension. Every dog is different, and what may work for one doesn't necessarily work for another. When I began thinking of my own energy management in these terms, it completely shifted my perspective. I started exploring what productive outlets might look like for me. Full body movement became my first go-to. A quick walk, stretching, or even a few moments of dancing when I felt that bubbling tension rising. Breath work was another key practice, but instead of shallow or forced breathing, I embraced more natural, deeper, guttural breaths that felt connected to my whole body. Sometimes vocalizing during those breaths, a sigh, a hum, or even a yell, helped release the energy further. I also began visualizing the energy moving through and out of my body. The traditional image of picturing the energy flowing through my body and into the ground wasn't productive. But when I connected the concept of visualization with my love and connection to water, the results were drastically different. For me, this became and still is my go-to method when I'm really struggling. The more I practiced these techniques, the more manageable my energy became. Full-blown panic attacks became less frequent, and when they did arise, I had tools to address them before they took over completely. And here's what struck me: the simplicity of it all. Just as a dog can reset their energy with a shake or a yawn, I could reset mine with movement, breath, or intentional visualization. It wasn't about overcomplicating the process or getting stuck in my head. It was about honoring the energy, letting it move, and then letting it go. This understanding has fundamentally changed the way I work with both dogs and people. Energy management is less about fixing something and more about creating space for energy to flow in a productive, healthy way. Whether it's through physical movement, intentional breathing, or finding a rhythm that allows us to release tension, the goal is the same: to lead ourselves and our dogs to a place of calm, balanced energy. And here's the beautiful thing. The more we practice these techniques, the more they become second nature. Over time, it gets easier to head off those overwhelming feelings before they escalate. And as we build this skill for ourselves, we can also model it for our dogs, showing them how to move through their own energy challenges with greater ease and confidence. So, whether you're navigating your own energy or helping your dog through theirs, remember, it's not about control. It's about movement, release, and leading yourself with calm intention. That's where the real transformation happens. So, what does this mean for you? Think about your own life. Where do you feel the bubbles of panic or tension rising? Where are you forcing yourself to process something that maybe you just need to breathe through? And with your dog, how often do you focus on fixing the behavior rather than addressing the energy behind it? The lesson Buddy taught me, and continues to teach me, is that energy isn't something to fear or fight. It's something to observe, understand, and lead through. Before we wrap up today, I want to take a moment to acknowledge how important mental health is. The lessons we discuss on this podcast about growth, challenges, and resilience can sometimes bring up emotions that feel heavy or overwhelming. If you are feeling stuck, struggling, or just need someone to talk to, know that you're not alone and help is available. Here are a few resources you can reach out to. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Call or text 988 for a confidential support 24/7. Crisis Text Line. Text HOME to 741-741 to connect with a trained counselor. The National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline. Call 1-800-950-NAMI or visit NAMI.org for support and resources. These and other resources are listed in the notes section of this episode. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as caring for your physical health. Whether it's reaching out to a friend, seeking professional support, or finding tools that work for you, every step counts. Remember, you are worthy of support, and there's no shame in seeking it. Thank you for being here, and take care of yourself. You are important. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I'm Kari Solberg, and I'll see you next time as we explore more lessons from the canine world and the heart of the human experience. Until then, remember, energy isn't the enemy. It's an opportunity for connection, for growth, and for transformation. Last weekend, I was at the first dog show of the season here in Colorado. And let's just say, I got an unexpected reminder that conflict has a way of finding you, whether you're ready for it or not. I went in excited to enjoy the weekend, but before I knew it, I was getting pulled into old dynamics I thought I had left behind. And honestly, it frustrated me way more than I wanted to admit. So, I did what I always do when I need to make sense of something. I turned to the dogs. Next week, we're talking about how dogs handle conflict, why avoiding it usually makes things worse, and how learning to face it head-on can actually strengthen our relationships. If you've ever found yourself avoiding hard conversations just to keep the peace, this episode is for you. I'll see you next time on Life Lessons from Dog.